I messaged one of my mates that's at the ECB. I said, what are you up to? I'm going to be in town. Do you want to grab a coffee or a beer? And he said, look, obviously, no promises, but we're going through a restructure. We're making some change. If you and Sarah are serious about moving, then go through the process and see what happens. So I interviewed before the holiday. I was lying on a beach in Italy when I sort of got the call from ECB HR to say, look, you've got this job. You start in 4 weeks. Went home, packed the bags, and then my wife and I drove to the UK. So that's how I ended up there. So very much similar to sort of what you guys spruiking around the importance of networking and keeping your contacts.
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Jason Russell-Jones. Jason is the head of community legacy projects at Rugby Australia. He has an epic background of experience, having worked at the Australian Sports Commission, Cricket New South Wales, and has lived over in the UK whilst at the England and Wales Cricket Board. There's lots to look out for in this episode, including how to work amongst major events such as the Olympics, moving overseas for work, of course, and plenty more. So let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. I'm Ryan Walker and joining me is the soon-to-be home Ruben Williams. We are 2 mates who met at Cricket Australia, and each week we learn how people made it in the sports industry. We tease out their career decisions, their work habits, their skills, and everything they do that makes them great, also that you can get in, get promoted and get thriving in the sports industry. Rubes, I can hear the hustle and bustle behind you. How are we?
G'day Ryan, I'm doing terrific, thank you. It's been a whirlwind of 7 days since I arrived in India, and during that time we haven't had time to chat much either, and there's a lot to fill you in on. Because
all I can say is I've seen your mug all over my TV, my group chats, my Discord feed, my LinkedIn feed. We need an explanation.
Well, firstly, apologies to Jason because I was very sad to miss this interview with him. But the reason why I'm not a part of this interview is because when I was journeying from Turkey to India, I arrived at Dubai airport ready to check into my next flight to Ahmedabad. And they said to me, you can't get on this flight because you don't have a visa to India. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I've completely forgotten that I need a visa to enter India. So I then had a lovely sleepless night at the airport and had to book another flight, and in the process missed the recording with Jason. And but thankfully, I was very lucky that last year at the T20 World Cup, I got paired up with the UAE cricket team. So I just called on their captain and said, hey, can I come hang out with you for a bit? And I met up with another bloke who I met in a hostel in 2018. So he let me stay at his house for that night. So I was very lucky that I've got these people in Dubai ready for me to fall back on. But then by the time I got to Ahmedabad, the next day I had to wake up and pretty much go straight to the World Cup match between Australia and England, where I went to the game dressed in full Aussie test kit, and I had tried this once before at Lord's, and I'm not there to do anything malicious. I just am a big cricket fan and wanted to wear my Australian kit loud and proud. Yeah, massive nuffy. And Lord's knocked me back, but India welcomed me with open arms, and I stood for about 600 selfies, I reckon. It was ridiculous. And so I went there alone and left with like 1,000 friends. And at the end of the night, I had a bunch of random fans invite me back to their house. So of course I said yes. And next thing I know, I'm in like this very humble abode with this, mum's welcoming me in, saying it's a pleasure to have me here. Here's some food. Please hold my baby. Can I get you anything to drink? Then they say like, would you like some dessert? I'm like, yeah, I'll have some dessert. I'm like, what have you got? She's like, do you want some ice cream? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll have some ice cream. They go out to the shop and buy every type of ice cream because they don't know what type of ice cream I want. I just thought you had it in the fridge or something, but no. So I'm hanging out at this house. It's like incredible. And then it got to like midnight, and like, all right, it's probably time to go. So I jump on the back of this motorbike and they start driving me towards my hotel. I'm still dressed up in full Australian kit, mind you. And we drive past this car park that's filled with about 200 people playing 8 games of cricket. And I said to them, let's go give these guys a surprise. Pull over here, let's go play some cricket. So it's now 12:30 in the morning. These people playing a casual game of cricket in the middle of the night. See this random guy from Australia just rock up on a motorbike, fully dressed in Australian kit, and say, hey, can I have a go?
Oh my God.
So I faced about 10 balls. They weren't very good deliveries. Got away for a few, which got my confidence up early. And then took a few photos and carried on and went to bed. So that was night 1. And I was like, oh my God, this is already a day I'll never forget. Then we get to Mumbai. And I'm in Mumbai for second World Cup game against Afghanistan. A few meetings with universities over here too. And again, I rock up in a full Australian kit. I ride the train in full Australian kit. Everyone's like, what the hell is going on here? Why is this guy dressed up like a cricketer? And Mumbai was even worse. Worse in the sense that like I just got absolutely mobbed to the point where like I got changed. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm out.
Oh.
So
he's tapped out. It's too much.
It was too much. Like there was a point where I'm standing up against the rails of like the 3rd tier, looking back up the row, and there's about 40 people standing in front of me. I'm like, I can't get out of here. I literally can't get out of here.
Yeah.
And so I tapped out of that one, got changed, and enjoyed it in a bit more quiet fashion. But then Maxwell goes on to play the most incredible innings I've ever seen in cricket, let alone probably the best individual sporting effort I've ever seen in my life of any sport. And I remember staying up late to watch Ben Stokes beat Australia in the Ashes by, playing that 150-odd 9th wicket. And that was just like a death by 1,000 cuts. Well, this was the opposite. It was like this slow drip of dopamine and then this sudden rush of emotion at the end. And I put up a story of my reaction, and my girlfriend Chloe messaged me saying like, are you drunk? I'm like, no, I'm stone cold sober. There's no alcohol in the stadium. This was just the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So,
what the hell?
Yeah, I'll be home soon, but finishing this trip in a flurry, that's for sure.
Yeah. Insanity from Maxi. There was someone who commented on one of our posts saying they're demanding a Maxwell podcast at some stage to debrief that. So that might be a little hard to do, but we're happy to reach out to Maxi's people. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm surprised you're getting mugged. I would have thought test kit on from a bloke who also looks a little bit like Pat Cummins. I hate to say it, but I'm not surprised. And I'm also not surprised he got changed because it might have been a little bit hectic getting selfies for 3 hours straight. But yeah, wow. It's looked like you haven't stopped, to be honest. So we need you back in the safety zone of Brisbane. And speaking of Brisbane, our meetup's coming up, which is a little bit funny because like you're going from 100 miles per hour and you're just going to jump into Australia and also do 100 miles an hour for 3 days. So yeah, super exciting.
That's right. We've got Brisbane meetup coming up on the 15th of November this week. Sydney on Thursday, 16th, and the big one, Melbourne, 17th on Friday night. And then the following week, Perth, the 22nd. So it'll be sometime after the Melbourne meetup that I'll actually get home to my own bed. But that's all right. Never a dull moment. But hopefully everyone's got a ticket by now. It's the last week. If you haven't done that, like surely jump on it now. You're leaving it to the last minute. But there's still time to grab one if you haven't. We've got some amazing guest speakers coming up. Tom Hickey in Brisbane from the Brisbane Olympics. You know, everybody says I want to work at Brisbane Olympics. Well, he's the guy that you need to speak to. Sydney, we got Franny Tay from Football Australia, who is an amazing person. She was on the podcast just the other week. In Melbourne, we've got Sarah Burt, who you would have heard from recently as well, and Katie Staniforth as well from Cricket Australia, who was also on the podcast in episode 242 or 244, I believe, earlier this year. So some incredible people to come and listen to, whilst also mixing with many great other people. But aside from that, there's plenty going on in the community. Shout out to our regular wins. This week we are shouting out Stella Z, who's got a job as a project officer with the City of Sydney. Well done to you, Stella. Vanessa Chan, team leader of customer experience at the Australian Open. That would be a great role. And Catherine Jeffcock, consumer business intern at Cricket New South Wales. Well done to you, Catherine. So well done to the community and to everyone who's hustling away, working towards their dream job. But if you'd like to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the community, including the chance to join the community, because that's coming up very, very soon. And one thing that I forgot to mention is that if you join a meetup, you can become a member on the night. Otherwise, you've got to wait a couple of weeks. But if you don't want to wait, and if you don't want to join the rush of people all trying to grab one of 70 spots that are opening up, come along to a meetup, because you can get exclusive access to join there. So sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter is where you can get everything that's going on.
Brilliant. This pod's a little bit different. It is a solo pod. I'm not sure what happened with the mic there, but we've got a few issues. I'll start again. It's an interesting episode. It's a solo pod, which is a little bit different, but I hope you enjoy. It's just me and Jason. So grab a pen and enjoy this chat with Jason Russell-Jones. Before we jump into the episode, we've got a quick message from our good friends at Deakin University. Deakin has been a huge supporter of SportsGrad since day one. If you're currently studying or you've just finished studying, having a postgrad qualification in sports management on your resume can give you a huge leg up over other potential candidates applying for that same role. So if you want to pump up your resume and get specialised knowledge in sports behaviour, law, marketing, ethics, finance, governance and strategy, take a look at Deakin's postgrad qualifications. Their Master of Business in Sports Management is not one of, but the best one in Australia, ranked at number 1. So add a postgrad to your resume, and that's our tip for the episode. Jason, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, mate.
Ryan, great to be here. I know we've lost a founding member, but hopefully we can make up for it today.
We have lost a founding member. It's a rare occasion where it's a one-on-one pod, but by all accounts, he's got his visa and he's somewhere in the sky. But I think we'll be just okay, just us. I reckon we can have a good chat nonetheless.
Yeah, doing a little bit of research. I thought I might be the first guy from rugby on the pod, or girl, but I think it turns out you had a Ryan on from Rugby Victoria back in or maybe not a Ryan. We had someone on in the early days, back in maybe first couple of months.
We have touched on rugby, but I think no one from Rugby Australia. So I think someone of your caliber, I'm shocked actually that it's taken 260 odd episodes to get here. But I'm more than happy to touch on Rugby Australia in what is a very timely episode as well, with plenty of rugby news. But I won't go there yet, but I might throughout the episode. But mate, doing some research on you during the week, you've got an outstanding resume. Like some of the organisations that you've worked at, like Cricket New South Wales, ECB, Australian Sport Commission, now Rugby Australia. What has been the number one out of those?
Oh, it's a really tough position to put me in. Number one, especially working at Rugby Australia at the moment. But look, I've only been here sort of 10 months at Rugby Australia. So I think, given, at heart, huge cricket badger way down that I keep hitting down. I'd have to say working at the ECB during Ashes series, Cricket World Cups in 2019, I think is pretty amazing. And sort of your first day walking through the gates at Lords is a pretty hard thing to go past. So, no disrespect to any other employees, current or former, but I think, and living in London for sort of 5 or so years holds a really fond place in my heart as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think anybody who walks through the gates of Lords, it's shooting up the list straight away. So I totally understand. Mate, I know you'd be a massive listener of the podcast. You know how this rolls, but we start every episode with some quick fire questions for our audience, just to get to know you a little bit better, and nothing too hard hitting. So I'll start. Well, you just spoke about your resume, but what was your first ever job?
First ever job, tried and tested first job was a paper round. So I think I started when I was about 14, delivering the local newspaper Wednesdays and Fridays. So, it was certainly not the most glamorous. And I think it probably paid, I think it was about $10 a week. And it probably took me 3 hours to do. So the hourly rate was pretty poor, but it was cash at a time when I had none. So I'll take it.
Nice, mate. And what'd you do at uni?
Uni, Bachelor of Sports Science at Sydney Uni, and then I went back for more pain, I guess. I did a Masters of Exercise Science in Strength and Conditioning over in Perth. So, did the Masters. Wasn't exactly sure necessarily what I wanted to do at the end of an undergrad. So I thought I'd stick it out and do a sort of another year and a half, build up that HEC step, and see what else I could get up to. So, yeah, they were the two I did.
And get a bit of time over in God's country, which is Perth as well, which is always good.
Yeah, so it was mainly via correspondence, but we did sort of condensed placement. So I think we had 3 weeks with a few mates that I was doing uni with, house in Perth at the start of December, so start of summer. So 20-year-olds living a bachelor life over there. We did a fair bit of study. We trained pretty hard, but we also had a pretty good time. So fond memories, definitely.
No, I love that, and love Perth in December, mate. I'm about to go there, so that's going to be great fun. Favorite sporting moment of all time?
Yeah, tough one. I've been privileged to get to a few. I know Rubes talks about Buddy's 1000th, and I'm a big Swans fan, so that's up there. But I won't show my age, but 2005 semi-final, Sydney versus Geelong at the SCG, and Nick Davis kicked four goals in the last quarter. That's definitely, and obviously went on to win the grand final a few weeks later. First one in many a decade. So that's the highlight looking back on it. Incredible day there with a few mates in the crowd. I think we were right behind the goals for that that quarter. So can't go past that.
Yeah, that is amazing. I still think that was a push in the back in the grand final though, by the way, on Ashley Sampi. But we won't get into that.
They got the square up the next year.
Yeah, exactly. It's all good. What's your favourite interview question that you like to ask of candidates going for jobs?
Yeah, this might be cheating because I haven't actually used it before, but I heard one from Simon Sinek the other day, which I really liked and sort of looking forward to using at some stage. And his question was sort of the way he frames it is, look, I don't really like surprises. I hate surprises. So can you tell me now what might go wrong in the future so that it doesn't surprise me then? So you're sort of asking the candidate in advance to show a bit of self-awareness. So that could be what their weaknesses are, or it could be some research that they've done on the job. So, they've sort of worked out what's in front of them. It might be a major event and things that might have gone wrong for them in the past at major events, or as I said, it could be self-awareness, and you're sort of avoiding that trap of asking them about weaknesses where they can sort of just trot out a pre-prepared paragraph that they've been waiting to roll out. It's probably one I'm looking forward to using.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. I trust you're a book or a podcast kind of guy, but any that have sort of helped you at work that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I don't know if it's helped me at work, but I know you've had them both on the pod. But TGC, the Grade Cricketer Guys for a pod, is always, I think it helps my work because I chill out listening to those guys. That's probably a regular pod. But the one I would say has really helped me at work is the Knowledge Project. So it's not necessarily sports-based, but it's sort of business-based, industry-based. You get CEOs on there, like philosophers, a bit of everything. And they share loads of different things. So some weeks it might not be of particular interest and I'll sort of tune out, but other weeks I'll get a fair bit out of it. And that tries to, I use that to try and broaden my knowledge outside of sort of the sports-specific stuff. I'd say that's probably the regular at the moment.
Nice. And are you associated with any grassroots clubs at all?
Yes. For my sins, I'm still on the committee at the mighty North Shore Bombers Aussie Rules Club in Sydney. So I've been there since I was sort of 15 now. I've been on the committee on and off since I was about 20. So 35 now. So what's that? 15 years on and off on the committee. I've hung up the boots a long time ago, but can't quite leave yet.
And finally, if you had 30 minutes to pick anyone's brain, who would it be?
Yeah, really tough question. I was having a think about this. I'm a I'm an NBA fan at heart, and that might be due to my complete lack of basketballing ability. That I've always sort of looked up to those guys and sort of amazed at the product they put out there. So I think NBA Commissioner Adam Silver would be awesome. They're always trying new things. Not too concerned about failing. They're always trying new partnerships, trying to highlight, I guess, sort of the heroes that are out there and really spotlight those guys. I think I saw a sponsorship they launched this week with, or a partnership with Kim Kardashian's new brand. I thought, like, not necessarily probably something that people would associate with the NBA, but I guess just shows what they're always trying to do and try something new. So I'd be really intrigued to pick his brain for a little while.
Awesome. Yeah, he'd be an absolute ripper. They're very progressive, the NBA, so I think any discussion with them would be outstanding. So awesome, mate. Well, that ends our quick questions. Brilliant. We love that. But let's get into the main body, because I think there's so much to talk about with your career. So I think, start us off. Can you tell us a little bit about your current role? What do you do? What are you responsible for? And what are some of the best parts of it?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mouthful, the title. Head of Rugby World Cup Community Legacy Projects. That going along with a long name makes for a pretty long email signature. But really what that's about is that, for those that don't know, Australia's hosting the Rugby World Cup for men in 2027 and for women in 2029. And as part of that, we're trying to sort of maximise the opportunity that it presents by those two events, to sort of create a really strong, thriving rugby community. So looking at all those projects in the community, all the strategic projects that we're looking to deliver in the lead up to that event, or those events, throughout those events, and then post. And we're sort of looking to expand that a little bit wider. You've probably heard some other guests on the pod talk about sort of Australia's golden decade, if you like, of sporting events in the country, with what was supposed to be the Com Games, a couple of Rugby World Cups, and then obviously culminating in Brisbane 2032. Rugby's also got the British and Irish Lions Tour in 2025, which is 40,000 screaming British and Irish fans coming out to watch the rugby. So for us, it's massive with the Com Games and the Olympics and our really strong 7 sides in there. This sort of rugby is going to be highlighted just about every year for the next 10 years. So it's leveraging those World Cups and everything else to have a lasting impact on the rugby psyche, I guess, and rugby participation, rugby fandom. So that's sort of a short summary of what I'm trying to do. And we've got a sort of a big team behind that in that community space. But then sort of outside of the community stuff, we're looking at the leadership and unifying the game. We're looking at the pathways and the performance side of things, obviously, which has probably been highlighted the last month or so. Looking at the social impacts and the sustainability of holding mega events. And I think one of the really exciting things and sort of unique to rugby as well is that sort of the Pacific support to it. So Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, huge rugby playing nations. I think rugby is to them what Aussie rules is to you Melburnians. It is sort of heart and soul, and as part of us being awarded the World Cups, sort of a commitment to world rugby and to the Australian government that will really do a lot of work in that Pacific space as well. So yeah, really, really exciting times.
For those tuning in, when is the Rugby World Cup here in Australia?
So men's is 2027. So it'll be basically this time in 4 years, and then the women's is in 2029.
Fantastic. Gee, it's like it feels far away, but it's not going to be, right? Like I look back, I'm like, how's it nearly 2024? It feels like we're still stuck in 2020. So I can imagine it would be, it seems a fair while away, but it won't be. How does that, like your job is really to look ahead, like really far, to see what impact you can have? Like, what's that like from different roles that you've had before? This is very much like forward looking and planning ahead. How do you go with that?
Yeah, it's different. I think if you looked at my CV, I've probably never held a specific role for sort of 4 years. I've moved around inside organisations and across organisations, which I've really enjoyed. But as you say, I've never had that sort of that lead in. So I think if anything, it just sort of highlights the importance of future planning and making sure you're achieving something every year. So it's not just everything is set to to kick off when the World Cup starts in 4 years' time. We've got projects along the way, whether that's club development projects, infrastructure, women's and girls leadership programs, etc., that are all part of it. And 2027 just sort of lights a fire underneath it or puts that spotlight on it. So these things aren't happening sort of only because of 27, but they're also not happening in isolation of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. As I mentioned at the top, like you've worked at some of this country, but also overseas some of the best organisations out there. Can you tell us sort of how you've ended up at Rugby Australia? A little bit more detail as to what I said at the start of the app.
Yeah, so I guess it's been a pretty long, or not long journey in sport. I'm 35. Hopefully that's not too old. But I sort of started out while I was at the footy club. My under 18s coach at the time got me doing a little bit of coaching for his business, so just like sports coaching, gross motor skills. And then while I was at uni, he sort of offered me a full-time job doing sort of managing part of his business, running those clinics, and we got to do some work with the AFL or AFL New South Wales as it was at the time, and a little bit of work with cricket. I worked with him for a few years till I was in my early 20s, and then I saved up a bit of cash and disappeared to Europe with my now wife for a fair part of the year in 2012, and then came back, was sort of scrounging around for some jobs, looking for a bit of work. And it was summer, and I was somehow got a job selling, or not selling, but some sort of promotional activation at the SCG for the Sydney Test. And it was the time when watermelon hats were all the rage. So I don't know who the partner was, commercial partner was, but I was there giving out watermelon hats. So really high-end job. But while I was doing that, I ran into a guy I used to do some work for at the AFL. So we used to run some programs with him, and he was asking what I was up to and sort of explained, well, mate, this is it. This is as good as it's getting at the moment. And he said, we've got some jobs coming up when we're getting a bit bigger. I'll give you a buzz when they come up. And sort of came up and went through the interview process, and that's when I started in 2013 at Cricket New South Wales, and just sort of a development manager role. Progressed through to a role at Cricket Australia, but still based in the Cricket New South Wales offices. So when the now Cricket Blast, but then T20 Blast came in, it was part of the sort of rollout of that in New South Wales. And then was lucky enough to get a participation manager role at Cricket New South Wales. So overseeing that Cricket Blast team and our schools team, and working really closely with the guys down at CA as well. So probably some names that are maybe just before your time, 2015, 2016, or maybe right on the cusp of your time. And there was a bit of an exodus of a couple of them to the UK, and my wife just happened to be going over there for work. So she was based at a European company, so we went over for a bit of a European holiday, and my sister was living in London. So I messaged one of my mates at the ECB. I said, what are you up to? I'm going to be in town. Do you want to grab a coffee or a beer? And he said, oh yeah, absolutely. What brings you in town? Is it business or pleasure? I said, look, mate, it's pleasure unless you've got business for me. And he said, look, obviously, no promises, but we're going through a restructure. We're making some change. If you and Sarah are serious about moving, then go through the process and see what happens. So all in sort of the lead up. This is all in the lead up to the holiday. I interviewed before the holiday. I was lying on a beach in Italy when I sort of got the call from ECB HR to say, look, you've got this job. You start in 4 weeks.
Wow.
We weren't going home for 2. So sort of got that extended to 6, went home, packed the bags, and then my wife and I moved over to the UK. So that's how I ended up there. So very much similar to sort of what you guys spruiking around the importance of networking and keeping your contacts, and then worked through a few roles at the ECB as we were sort of launching our national programs. So the equivalent of Cricket Blast, Auskick, NetSet Go. We launched All Stars Cricket in 2016, started 2017. Then sort of progressed through roles there as senior manager of those programs. And then at the start of 2020, right before COVID kicked off, I got the promotion to head of national programs, so looking after that department, and then had sort of a couple of COVID interrupted years, that we might say, through to the back end of 2021, and then had a young kid while I was over there, which was great, but hadn't met any of he hadn't met any of our family. We hadn't been able to introduce him to anyone back in Australia. Sort of visas were expiring, and I spoke to my boss. I should give him a call out on here because I think Rubes has already done it. But Nick Pride, who was the director of participation and growth, former CA. Staff member, and I said, look, we're considering going home. We're not really sure yet, but we've got to find out. And he was brilliant, actually. He said, look, take as long as you need. Go back to Australia. HR were brilliant as well. Said, look, have 3 to 6 months, but if you could make your mind up earlier, that'd be great. And then when we're back in Australia, we sort of realised, this family business is pretty important to us. We love our young kid to grow up around his family, so we made the decision to pull the trigger and move home. Did a bit of interviewing for the Sports Commission, took a role as a senior participation manager or senior participation advisor there, sort of advising lots of sports on their participation strategies, our investment into them from the Sports Commission. And then, sort of 12 months there, and this really exciting role came up at Rugby, which was pretty hard to pass up. So that's probably the short of it. There's probably a few hours of stories on each level in between, but that's how we're here.
Nice. I'm keen to go back to sort of when you, excuse me, made that sort of decision to move over. And I guess we get a lot of people come to us and ask sort of like, what's it like? How do I get a gig overseas? Just what does that whole process look like? But I think overall it's just making that decision to stick with it and go. I'm keen to understand sort of what were the thoughts going through your head at the time around, should I do this? Should I not? How did you get that confidence, I guess, just to make that call and be like, yep, this is me?
That's a tough question because I actually don't really know. It was a really quick turnaround, sort of, going over there for a holiday and then someone asking, would you consider moving? And we hadn't really thought about it before. We kind of, maybe it was easier because I had a sort of long-term partner and we were sort of both in it together. We're just like, well, if worst case, if it all goes belly up, then we've got each other. So we sort of made that, really quick turnaround. I think my sister was already over there. My wife had a few, her brothers lived overseas. So it's kind of everyone had made those journeys before. And I think we knew some people over there as well. We knew quite a few people over there. So, I think Chris Dobson was on here a month or so ago and he was saying, there's really similar culture, a lot of people over there. So it's not really that much of a stretch to see yourself moving over there, and visas and all of those things are actually really easy to get to the UK as long as you're sort of under a certain age. So all of the excuses were really off the table. Had a job, getting a visa was easy, had a partner and had a place to stay. So once you realise you don't have any excuses, it's pretty hard to say no.
Yeah, awesome. It definitely. It's certainly opened our eyes, talking to Dobbo and a few other guys that have gone over there. It sounds like out of all places to go and all places to go and work overseas, it sounds like the UK is a pretty simple one to do. So, I guess that's kind of what we say to people when they come to us is like, well, we know a lot about the UK because a lot of people have done that. But yeah, there's lots of examples there of people doing it.
Yep, and I couldn't recommend it enough. I think everyone would have contacts from who they've worked with that would have people working in various organisations over there and sort of getting that foot in the door. Obviously, easy for me to say because I had a job before I moved over there, but I also feel like with the ability to connect with people, culture's the same. Coffee's getting a hell of a lot better in the UK than what it was. So catching up with someone over a coffee or a beer and sort of making that. Putting in that groundwork is relatively easy as far as it could be in moving to other places.
No, I have heard the coffee in Europe is horrendous.
Oh,
it's certainly different to here in Melbourne, coffee capital.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Ruse has been saying it's horrendous, but it also costs double what it would here. So you're paying about $10 for a morning coffee, which is not quite sustainable, I wouldn't have thought, but Yeah, surely someone's going to make some good coffee sometime soon over there.
So there's a couple of things. I think London's got so much better. 2016 when I went there, it was you're really hunting down places. I still remember my first cup of coffee. Barely slept in the 24-hour flight. I was meeting my boss, and he's Australian, lived in Melbourne, should have known better, but we went to this little cafe on St John's Wood High Street near Lord's, Carluccio's, and had one of the worst coffees of my life. The last thing I needed at that stage, but after living there for a few years, maybe I got accustomed to the taste, but they're definitely moving in the right direction coffee-wise. Over in Europe, a little bit different. You either pay a lot for a really nice coffee, or you just get used to, basically you just drink espressos everywhere, and espressos you can get, there's no cost there. They're €1 or €1.50 for an espresso, and you just go, that's me.
Enough.
Yeah.
Nice. Coming back to sort of the legacy side of things and your gig now, do you have the next sort of 5-6 years mapped out? Like, do you know exactly what's coming up at each year, or is it a little bit more ad hoc than that?
Yeah, I'd say we've got probably 80% of it mapped out from a community perspective. So as part of the bid to win the World Cup, and as part of the sort of agreement with the Australian government that we've got, is that we had to map out all of our priorities between now and 2029 for the Women's World Cup. So we have sort of the 3 pillars of our strategy. We've got the projects that sit underneath them, and we've got a sort of rough phasing of all of those. We'll tweak that. We might put more of an emphasis on one thing or another, depending on how it's received and how it's going, or whether we can sort of secure more funding or anything like that. But by and large, what we're trying to do is really clear, and it really aligns with our organisational strategy for the whole of rugby, not just for the Rugby World Cup. So it's taken a fair bit of foresight and a lot of planning, and a lot of consultation with all of our member unions and clubs and associations across the country. But we're in a pretty good position to roll that out over the next, whatever it is now, sort of 6 years till the end of 2029.
This might be a bit of an out there question, and I know, or maybe a little hard hitting, but I think, like, when I look at what the media says about Rugby Australia and like the state of the game and all that kind of stuff, and I think we both know as well as many, like, the media can hype things up and they can say things are much worse than they actually are. I think that's the case here. Like, it feels like the media is just absolutely going at rugby, but also, like, just overstating things and making it seem much worse than it actually is. Is there anything you can say to sort of, like, say, I guess, where the game's at and sort of just to kill some of that negativity around the game at the moment?
Yeah, I look at as you said, you worked at Cricket Australia during some difficult times. Similar for me at English cricket and now rugby. The media's job is to sell stories. The media's job is to sell advertising on those stories, get clicks, and the reality is that bad news is much more attractive than good news. And at a time when the Wallabies didn't perform well and certainly can't hide from that. It's easy to go after rugby, but some of the stuff that's been said around participation, numbers declining, all of those things is actually just not true. So again, despite what's reported, sort of numbers in all of our metrics have been going up every year for the last 4 years. So sort of growth in every category, whether that's junior participants, senior participants, women and girls has been growing at a great rate. It's been sort of our fastest growth section. Our junior programs has been really strong, and then we've also got, I guess, one of the strings in our bow, similar to cricket, having multiple formats. We've got sort of the 15-a-side game, and then we've got the sevens game, which, for those people that have sort of got around sevens, it's a bit of more of a party atmosphere in terms of the professional game, and that's been really helping us grow sevens from the grassroots level as well. So all of those numbers are looking on the up. Same with our sort of refs and coaches numbers. Are we at the same level as, say, soccer in this country or cricket in this country? Definitely not. Has there been, mistakes made in the past and things that need to improve? Absolutely. And definitely not shying away from that. But, it isn't this sounds like just denial, but it isn't actually declining. As I said, the last 4 years, sort of all of our metrics are going in the right direction, and we'll be certainly, pushing pretty hard to make sure they keep growing, and sort of this next 10 years gives us a really good opportunity to do that.
No, it's good. I think I grew up in Perth, where rugby union is huge. Like at school, it was one of the most popular sports. So I think I've kind of grown up with rugby as one of the key players, and I still, in my head, I still kind of see it that way. So I think when you do see the negativity around it, you want to sort of dig deeper and think, like, is this actually the case, or is this just the case of everyone's a bit flat because the Wallabies didn't make the finals of the World Cup? So it's good to hear that, like, the numbers and the actual truth of what's actually happening out there, which is good. I want to touch on some of the sort of intricate details of your job, and keen to understand sort of what are some essential skills and experiences that I guess you need to be able to do your job really well.
I think the first one, and it's probably been across every job and most jobs in sport, is that stakeholder management and sort of ability to build relationships. Most people that are working at NSOs are working in sort of that federated structure where you've got the governing body, you've got the state body, and then you've got sort of everyone that's playing and participating, whether that's, hundreds or thousands of clubs across the country. So, just the structure almost internally alone is really complex to navigate. And then, when you throw in partners, government, World Rugby, sort of everything that goes along with it, the ability to influence and build relationships in those areas is so important. Luckily, English cricket gave me a good head start on that. There was, here we've got the 8 states and territories. In the UK, we had 39 county cricket boards. So it's actually quite nice coming back to just 8 after the 39 over there. The other one in this role, I think, is sort of turning that strategy into operations. So sort of operationalizing a strategy. As I said, we've got that strategy for the next 6 years to the end of the Women's World Cup. We've got it all mapped out. Now it's about sort of, getting the rubber on the road and making all of that come to life. And I guess it goes back to that point before about stakeholder management. Often at the NSO, the governing body, you're not necessarily the ones that are rolling all of these things out. You're working with the clubs, you're working with local community, working with the state or territory bodies. So, rolling that out is relying on them and working really closely with them to do a lot of that work. And then I think the third one, particularly for me at this point, is around that project management piece. So, we've got sort of these 8 key projects that we want to deliver between now and 2029. At any one of those things, I might be either project managing those, project sponsoring those, or delivering those. So, to be able to keep tabs on all of those, prioritize those that need to be prioritized at the right time, and make sure I don't miss anything. Really being across the project management side of things is very important.
I feel like whenever we speak to sort of, people in NSOs or SSOs as well, like the concept of, the structure of, how the sport is run. You've got each state organisation, you got the one at the top, and it's always a challenge. And I think, like, for people who haven't worked in those settings, it's just kind of like noise. Like, they're not really sure, like, what does that actually mean? Like, why is that such a challenge? So I'm keen to understand from your perspective, like, why is it hard to work between all these different organisations, and why isn't it just as simple as, let's all get on the same page? Because the outsiders, I'm not sure, quite understand why it is so hard.
You might put me in an awkward spot answering this one.
Yeah.
No, look, working, I guess the thing is, you've got, Australian rugby or Australian cricket. I think the AFL's actually moved to a centralised model now, which is probably making life a lot easier for them. So kudos to them. But you've got every state or territory has their own, or probably their own strategy as well as the national strategy. They've got their own idea of works. They've got their own influences, clubs coming directly to them. They've got their own boards, CEOs, chairs that all have their own opinions that feed in. And whilst you want everyone flowing, working on the same page, flowing off the same strategy, the reality is that those influences are going to impact on what they're trying to do. And you also don't want to lose that creativity or the uniqueness of the individual state, because they know their area better than anyone else. So, the demographics in Queensland vary from top to bottom, let alone between Queensland and New South Wales, or Queensland and Victoria, or any of the other states and territories. So you've got that sort of complex bit where everyone is, in a way, sometimes voting for themselves and their own success, but you also don't want to lose that by losing the things that make them really strong and make those areas unique. So I think one of the areas where you make it successful and you make it work is if you have really clear strategies, goals, and sort of KPIs for the states, and often that's sort of funding related. It does help everyone pull in the right direction, and then they can sort of flex where they need to around sort of their own priorities or their own demographics, but they can still deliver on what you're trying to. I think where it gets probably more complex than, say, rugby, which is primarily top-down funded, is some of the sports where it's bottom-up funded. So essentially they're funded from the, maybe listeners might call me out if I've got this wrong, but some of the other sports like football and netball, they're pretty heavily grassroots funded. So that's money coming from registrants feeding up to the sort of association, then to the state, then to the national body. Whereas, say, rugby, cricket, AFL, they're all very top-down funded. So a lot of the money that comes from TV rights then filters down to all the other organisations. So that probably does help us, which might hinder some of the other organisations.
Yeah, nice. No, it's good sort of hearing it from your perspective, because yeah, I mean, like, my experience was at CA, then working with each of the states, and I totally get what you mean by, like, each state is different. They've got their own identity. They all want to do things in different ways. And I guess the best way it would work is when there was a clear strategy from the top, and you can kind of just clearly communicate it. I always remember at this, at the start of the new season, which would usually be around, April, started planning for the new year. It's like, we'd always get questions from states saying, like, what's the strategy? Like, what is it? And it's like, if you could say what it was and, they understood it, then everything worked well. If you didn't really know what you're talking about, it didn't work so well. So it's,
that's right.
Yeah, it's good. It's good hearing that, and it's good context for those listening as well. Can you touch on who's helped you along the way? Because you've had an awesome journey, and you've obviously built a really strong network. You mentioned your contacts at the ECB who sort of got you into that gig and sort of helped you along the way. But is there anybody in particular who sort of helped you over your career, and what's some of the impact they had and some of the advice that they gave as well?
Yeah, I think all the managers I've had, and this is me just sucking up a little bit, every manager I've had has been great, and sort of a couple of them I've had multiple times. I've been really lucky with everyone in that perspective. They've been really supportive, and sort of when I've sought challenges, they've provided those for me to help me grow. So I said Nick Pride from the ECB sort of helped me get over there, and then was my manager or director for a lot of the time I was in the UK, and sort of his approach to I guess to strategy, but also to the networking side of things. So to managing up was something that really it's really influenced me. I've had a couple of other people which so people that I've worked with over the years might laugh at, but I'll stick with it anyway. So at English Cricket, there's a guy, Samuel Carter, who's our sort of head of business performance, more of a strategy background, worked for sort of consulting firms. And the first time I met him, I did not understand him at all, like sort of his approach to thinking and his approach to challenging me. But the more I worked with him, the more you realise what he was trying to get at, and that was just be really clear on your thinking and really clear on the problem you're actually trying to solve. So, he just asked me over and over again the same question until I was really clear on what I wanted out of the outcome. So, he's certainly one, and we'll do it in quite a dry and harsh way, which early on it hurt, and then after a while you just realise that's him. He's also offering coaching spots for anyone he certainly was, anyone on LinkedIn who's looking for one. So reach out to Samuel if you need it. And another one which, never managed me, never really worked in the same department, was at Cricket New South Wales, a guy that was just always there for a chat. Some people might infamously know him, Darren Goodger, who's sort of more in the umpires space, but he had this corner office, and it was just on the way out of Cricket New South Wales offices to sort of like to the gym, to the nets, to the cafe, and it just sort of, give you a heads up and sort of pull you in for a chat. Sometimes you'd be in there and you'd have a chat for a minute, and you'd just be chatting about, nonsense. Other times you'd be in there for an hour and a half and you're sort of talking about life and you're talking about career. And, he was someone that early on when I had presentations, for roles or bigger opportunities, I'd just share it with him and he'd help me really, provide that clarity on what I was trying to achieve. So that's definitely those two, and probably been lucky with some good friends outside of work as well who've been high achievers in areas that are not sport. Whether that's sort of like construction or finance or whatever it is. You can just sort of run different problems by them because they look at it from a different perspective. So yeah, I've probably been really lucky. I think most people have helped me, and I feel like I've shortchanged a few of them, but not calling them out by name. Mick Brassard, there's another one. He's my current manager. So just in case he listens, I better mention you, Mick.
Yeah, Mick's a legend.
You know him from Cricket Australia. Yep,
big Eels fan.
Yeah, long suffering.
Yeah, he was a ripper at cricket. Enjoyed work with Big. So we'll have to get him on the pod. I reckon. You know who he never, and I'm going to call him out because he would love it. But like want him to come to a SportsGrad meetup in Sydney. Just it's like he's allergic to it. So Mick, if you're listening, which I hope you are, get your skates on, mate.
He might listen if he hears he's been called out on it.
Yeah,
look, he's a busy man with rugby and two kids. But I'm sure we've got one in. I don't know when this goes to air, but a couple of weeks on a Thursday. So I'll see if we can drag him down from Moore Park down George Street. So we'll see how we go.
No, that's good. Get him down. We need him at 1. I know I was going to say what's next. I know there's obviously a pretty big runway and what you're doing now in terms of what's come up rugby-wise, but where do you sort of see yourself ending up in the future? Do you have any plans or what are you sort of thinking longer term?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned my CV before, I've sort of moved around a little bit. Like stayed in the same organisation for sort of 4 years, 6 years, but moved different roles. So the idea that I'll still be doing this role in 4 years' time or 6 years' time is a little bit foreign to me. But at the same time, I want to really make the most of the runway presented to those 2 World Cups, and then just I guess the challenge is on me to make sure I'm still being challenged, still developed in this role, and sort of seek those future opportunities. I think continuing to work up through the levels of management, through the levels of sort of opportunity that present themselves is something I'm quite keen to do. I guess maybe a glint in the eye is sort of 2032. It's probably everyone that's working in sports has said that, but I don't know when the next Olympics will come to Australia if we're still going to be here. So something in that space is something I'm sort of maybe just looking at the corner of my eye. It's also this like really unique period where France, Australia, and the US all have Rugby World Cups and all have Olympics. So I just feel like there's something there where there's got to be a way of sort of just pivoting across the two for a little while. Look, I think in the long run, and this is very long down the track. So, Mum, Dad, if you're listening, not intending to move overseas again with my family just yet, but I think my wife and I really enjoyed our time in London. So whether that's 10, 20, 30 years down the track, I could definitely see myself, working overseas for a period again, sort of involving ourselves in sport and looking at the opportunities that present themselves, particularly in the US. I just think it's a really different market and really exciting market over there. And sort of another thing I'd like to get to is working on the other side of it. So working more in, I guess, the consultancy space at some stage. Been in NSOs, SSOs, and been at the government. But I'd like to work on the other side and sort of show that experience and be able to sort of help people out from a different perspective. So probably nothing really clear there in terms of, titles or organisations, but sort of a general direction anyway.
Yeah, I think you're not wrong. I think most people have 2032 in the corner of their eye. So, and you're right. Like, when will we get another Olympics? Like, and it won't be in our lifetime. You wouldn't have thought. So, I think it's fair enough that it is in everyone's eyes. Finally, mate, this has been really good. What's some advice you'd give to your younger self if you were to do it all again? What would you say?
Yeah, first one would be take more pictures, and that's just come around purely from you guys asking for a couple of pictures for the pod, and I realise I don't have many of me that are appropriate in sort of the work environment. There's a lot of me having a good time at work, or a lot of action shots, but so I think that one, and it probably goes back to a podcast you had with Adrian Tobin, I think a few weeks or months ago, where he was sort of talking about creating this almost like personal hype reel or sort of video resume and of sort of your experience. So I think for people that are looking at it now, I think that's a big opportunity. And then I think the other one is sort of really around, continuing to build that network and nurture that network. I've been really lucky with sort of the opportunities I've got, but there's also been a few that I missed out on along the way because I didn't leverage a network that I had. I think probably the biggest example for me was there was a job which it was a little while ago now, but it was what I thought was the dream job for me at the time, and a job which I thought I was the perfect candidate for. Like, still looking back on it now, I am 99% sure that I was 100% should have got an interview, and I reckon I would have been up there with the number one or two candidate. And I thought, I didn't know the manager, but I knew he was a friend of a friend, so I thought, look, I should reach out to him, reach out to my mate and sort of put me in contact, and at least then they know that I'm serious. I thought, oh, look, I'll do that after I get an interview, or I can use that in the interview. Didn't get an interview, and I sort of leave that rejection email. I just leave that in my inbox, my personal inbox now. It's just a reminder of, okay, just like looking back on that, again, as I said, it was a little while ago now, a few years, but I can look back at that and go, you know what, you missed out, you missed the opportunity there. Don't let that happen again. So, don't be afraid to use those you're making the networks. And I know that's what the podcast and SportsGrad is all about. So make sure you leverage them.
I love that. It's like your own little, a permanent bit of inspiration / motivation, whatever you need to do to sort of remind yourself to keep pushing on and doing all the right things. Like, I love that. Whether it's on your wall or if it's in your inbox, I think plays the same role. So, that's fantastic. Jace, mate, it's been really good chatting, and I can't say I've ever done a pod this long solo. So I think we did a pretty good job, hey? But
we got there.
We got there, but no, it's been really good hearing just about your journey. I think, as I said at the top, like, your resume is outstanding. Like, just looking at all those different organizations, your experience is something that people would be really, really, I guess, jealous of, and just kind of look at that as a bit of inspiration for themselves. So really appreciate you coming in and just talking about some of those experiences and how you've got to where you've got to, and good luck for this sort of golden decade, we're calling it. It's the biggest buzzword in sport at the minute. Yep. But good luck for the next sort of 6 years, and the World Cup's coming up. They're going to be big. So thanks again, mate.
Cheers, Ryan. Had a lot of fun, mate. Really enjoyed it.
Guys, it's time now for the people's segment of the podcast, Ask SportsGrad, where every week we answer a question directly from our community. If you'd like to ask us a question, first you've got to become a SportsGrad member. Head to our website right now, sportsgrad.com.au/community, to join our next intake waitlist. Rubes, this one comes from Claudia, and she says, I get a little bit nervous for job interviews really easily. How can I get myself comfortable?
Great question. And I've definitely been in this position where you're going for a job interview, you really, really want it, you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and sometimes the pressure gets too much for you. To try and overcome this, I'd say there's probably two parts to it. One of it is doing proper preparation, and the other one is getting your mindset right. So, Claudia, I'm not too sure how far in advance your interview is, but you should ideally be preparing for interviews pretty much all the time. If you're documenting your work on a regular basis, you are constantly preparing for an interview because that's how you're going to speak about it. But if you've got an interview in a week's time, I would spend every single day writing down potential answers or writing down stories about your experience, and then spending more time talking to your friends about that. Literally call up your friend, call up your mum, your dad, and just say, hey, can you ask me a few questions about what I've done in my recent internship or in my recent job? And that gives you a chance just to talk about your experience. So the more that you can write down your answers and practice speaking them to anybody in any format, the more comfortable you'll get. So proper preparation always helps with confidence, because then you feel like you know what you're going to say on the day. The other part is your mindset. And Claudia, if you're like me, sometimes you can put a lot of pressure on one particular event in one particular point in time. So to try and overcome this, you really have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. There will be other job opportunities that come up. You do have a lot of time to grow your career. Your entire life does not hinge on this one particular job interview. If it goes wrong, that's okay. In fact, if it goes wrong, you're going to get some amazing feedback and some amazing experience that will take you further than you probably could have gone before. So look at it as an amazing opportunity to, one, have a crack at that dream job that you thought maybe you weren't ready for, or two, get some interview experience for the next role that comes up. Because either way, you either get the job or you learn, and both of them are amazing outcomes for you. So if you can zoom out and try and switch your perspective to what an opportunity you've got in front of you and how it's going to benefit you going forward, then hopefully that can help you keep you calm in the moment.
Great question, Claudia. Practice, practice, practice. Repetition, repetition, repetition. That's all it is. That's what gives you confidence. Great stuff. Well, if you'd like to ask us a question or ask our friends in sport a question, sign up and become a SportsGrad member in our next intake. Just head to our website, sportsgrad.com.au/community, to join our next waitlist, where you can find everything that you need to get a job in sport inside the SportsGrad community. Each fortnight, we jump on the speed networking events, masterclasses, job fairs, everything that you need to get in. You get access to over 50 hours of content on our SportsGrad member-only resource hub. So join today. In the meantime, find us on LinkedIn. Give us some love with a rating if you enjoy the show. Subscribe on Apple or follow us on Spotify. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, one last thing before you go. If you'd enjoy a quick email from us each Friday on all the latest job openings, networking events, Q&As with industry professionals and latest podcast episodes, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Head to our website, www.sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe. There's also a link in our show notes to join.